Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd do a review on the 12th episode of Handmaid's Tale Season 2. This particular episode has set the stage for a powerful Season 2 finale, which will be happening next week. A major character arrives and another one dies. Given Gilead's deadly nature, it was only a matter of time until the fall of Eden. Eden's death marks a shift towards the end game for the Handmaid's Tale Season 2, already marked with copious amounts of tragedy. The devout teenager's fate was sealed when she ran away from the Waterford household along with Isaac, the guardian, with whom she fell in love with. Shortly after they ran away, Eden and Isaac were apprehended and publicly executed, drowned to death in what was once a high school swimming pool. Offred, or June, and Serena, Joy, are among the witnesses and in attendance. Both of them are utterly horrified at the level of brutality leveled against such a young girl. An event that would be horrifying enough on its own, but takes on an additional layer of trauma given the recent birth of June's daughter Holly, now known as Nicole, within the Waterford household. At the conclusion of Postpartum, Offred and Serena find themselves unified once again in the aftermath of Eden's death, bonded over their natural concern for their daughter. It's not the only major status quo shift within a commander's household this week either. In a different storyline, Emily finds herself assigned as a handmaid for Commander Joseph Lawrence, an eccentric figure to say the least. Lawrence immediately stands out as a very different kind of commander, strict in his own right, blunt in his words, but seemingly liberal, if only in his artistic interests. What does Commander Lawrence's arrival mean for the future of Gilead in the series? How will Eden's exit impact in the lives of Offred and Serena, and how will the two protect Holly/Nicole from the increasingly deadly world of Gilead? Those answers are coming in the season finale. The Handmaid's Tale Season 2 Episode 12 brings us more horror than a shaky truce. It's beginning to feel as though June will never make it out of Gilead, and she'll never make it out of the Waterford's house for longer than a few days at a time. Whenever she goes, she just keeps getting pulled back into that house. And while this doesn't yet feel repetitive, mostly thanks to June and Serena, intriguingly, it's starting to feel like June, Serena, and Fred are locked in a cycle the show doesn't know how to get them out of. The Waterford's violent rape of June 2 episodes ago felt like a point of no return, an event that would prematurely shatter whatever uneasy bond had existed between June and Serena. But judging by this week's episode Postpartum, nothing much has really changed, except that Holly's birth has given June a concrete reason for wanting to go back to Waterford household. Here are 5 things to note from Postpartum. 1, Emily has a new commander and he's not quite right. Aunt Lydia takes pain to remind Emily how lucky she is that the brilliant, important Commander Lawrence has agreed to take her when 4 other couples have already refused her. Maybe they also subscribe to my theory that Emily is magical and low-key killed her last commander with her vagina. I'm wondering why such a brilliant, important man would take such as shitty handmaid Emily Snell. I found it initially hard to put my finger on what is so unsettling about the Lawrence house. It's dark, filled with a lot of aggressive art and moderately creepy sculptures. Mrs. Lawrence is mysteriously feeling ill and is out of sight when Emily arrives, while the Martha only swears and seems constantly on edge. And Lawrence himself is impossible to read, and he seems amusingly ill at ease with Gilead greetings, muttering super. And Emily gives him the standard, may God find me worthy spiel. Is he a kindly outlier as far as commanders go? Probably not, as it turns out. It's not long before Lawrence is reminiscing about the good old days, for the penalty for reading was having an entire hand cut off instead of just one finger. And his fragile wife lets slip to Emily that Lawrence is not just the architect of Gilead's economy, but the architect of the colonies, which puts Emily in a very unique position as his handmaid. Most people do not come back from the colony. Lawrence also knows a lot about Emily and seems to take far too much pleasure in asking her a series of increasingly intrusive questions, culminating with the crushing revelation that he knows about her forced surgery. Have you healed properly? He asks, complete with Hannibal Lecter-style mouth sound. For a society whose sole purpose is to theoretically create babies at all costs, these people are very, very bad at infant care. Even after the miraculous recovery of Janine's baby, which should have proved once and for all that separating a newborn from its mother is bad, nobody in power wants to admit it. And so June is stuck pumping via machine in the hospital while Serena dotes on Holly back at home, determined not to let June anywhere near her baby, now called Nicole. Even Aunt Lydia is clearly frustrated with the arrangement, and when June's milk begins to dry up, she's instrumental in persuading Fred to bring June back into the household so that she can pump in proximity to Holly, if not nurse her directly. The sight of June's rapist holding her baby is completely nauseating, and it's a tribute to both June and Nick, highly developed poker faces that neither one of them visibly shudders. Fred's for wanting June back at home. Of course, nothing to do with the baby's well-being. This is where it gets really creepy. And he wastes no time in reminding June that he made the reunion with Hannah happen. When she thanks him, he literally responds, "Is that all the thanks I get?" Because he has given up on any subtlety he has ever had. Once again, June commendably keeps her cool and tells him that maybe one day that they can play Scrabble sometime, which is all fine and good and delivered with a nice edge of snark by Elizabeth Moss. Now, number 3, Eden pays for her piety with her life. I have to say, I didn't see Eden and Isaac's tragic love story coming, if only because Isaac seems like bland garbage from the very little we've seen of him. But given Eden's upbringing, this is probably her first experience of a man being interested in her, and in contrast to Nick's total disinterest, it's easy to see how their relationship would feel like love to her. Both Nick and June, who unwittingly encourages Eden to run away with Isaac, telling her in this place you have to grab love wherever you can find it, which is all good and lovely and an important sentiment, but also an incredibly dangerous one if you're not willing to lie. Lying is what's allowed Nick and June to survive for so long, but Eden's piety makes it impossible for her to do the same, no matter how hard Nick tries to persuade her. If she just tells the authorities that Isaac forced her to run away with him, just like June was kidnapped rather than escaping earlier this season, she'd be let off. But Eden insists that God knows what's in her heart, and she's willing to accept her fate in exchange for telling the truth. But they remain silent and publicly drowned in a pool complex. Eden's mother screams next to a stunned Nick, while Serena and June are visibly devastated. Between the baseball stadium in episode 1 and this swimming pool, Gilead really knows how to turn formerly fun venues into horrifying execution chambers. As he's trying to desperately persuade Eden to save herself, Nick is forced to come to terms with how he's treated her, realizing his inability to be kind to her, which drove her to another man. He was understandably too preoccupied with June and their baby to give Eden much thought. And that remains true even though Nick allowed themselves to fantasize about running away to be a real family. But Eden's brutal fate puts a serious damper on that dream, adding a very real human cost to the ongoing affair. When June tries to comfort Nick after Eden's death, he brushes her off. And it's not clear whether that's a momentary impulsive or a harbinger of things to come. Though June and Serena's relationship is still compelling, it makes far less sense in the wake of that rape scene. I am so conflicted about this because June and Serena's evolving dynamic has been my favorite element of season 2. And anytime they share the screen is absolutely fascinating. But June's feelings towards both the Waterfords appear to be unchanged. She's still subtly manipulating Fred and still seems quite sympathetic to Serena. But there are definitely moments in which it's hard not to sympathize with Serena in this episode. Her trying in vain to breastfeed Holly is so sad and so raw, but she's truly cruel in her efforts to obliterate June's role in the child's life, forbidding her from having any contact at all with the baby. And it's only the trauma of what happened to Eden that makes her reconsider. It's a little frustrating to me that this external event is what prompts June and Serena to come back together. It makes sense on Serena's side, but not on June's. Serena clearly felt somewhat maternal towards Eden, and seeing her killed so viciously makes her afraid for her baby in a way that Serena softens her towards June. She's able to care for the baby in a way that Serena can't. But June coming to Serena, the woman who once again held her down while she was being raped weeks ago and asking, "Are you all right?" felt so strange. June developing a form of Stockholm syndrome with Serena in particular could make sense, but I'd like to see her motivation explored a little more in next week's season's finale. That concludes episode 12 of The Handmaid's Tale season 2. I look forward to giving you a review next week, which will be episode 13 and the final of this year. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to me and my review. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, and I shall see you shortly. Bye for now.